Hello and welcome back to another Maya tutorial. This time we're going to have a look at modelling a basic table leg. So to begin with, set the project folder, go to File, Set Project, and I'm going to choose the same project folder as we did with the table top, just so everything goes in the same place. Save the scene as well before you start. File, Save Scene, and give it a name. Make sure it's going in the project folder and then save as. So we're going to start with a polygon sphere. Place that in the middle of the grid. Don't worry too much about the size. Make sure it is in exactly the middle of the grid by going to your channel box and typing 0 on Translate X, Y and Z. Now we need to title this object as well. So make sure you have your outliner open. Go to Windows, Outliner, and then retitle that object. Double click on the default name and then give it an appropriate name. And now we can start manipulating this. So we can reduce the divisions first, and we can actually go quite low because this is only going to be the very base of the leg. It's going to be quite small, so we can go right down to about 8 divisions. So select your object, go to the channel box, Inputs, Polysphere 1, click on the words Polysphere 1, and then now we've got subdivisions axis and height. We need to reduce both of those down to 8. And like I said in the previous tutorial, don't worry that it's not that round yet, we can smooth it later on. And we can first go to the very bottom of this sphere. And if we look at this, if we look at any individual face, the majority are what we call quads or quadrilaterals. Now that means there's 4 sides to every face. But in the very centre, there's only 3. These are tris. Now ideally you want to model either in all tris or all quads. I find quads much easier to start with for this type of modelling. So we can convert this centre section here into quads by actually deleting every other edge. So if we right click, hold the right button down on the mouse and go to Edge, and select every other edge just in this centre section, and then press backspace to delete those. And now you'll find every face actually has 4, so now they're quads. Even though they look very different to everything else, a quad doesn't mean a square, it just means a 4-sided shape. At the very top, we need to delete this section. So we can go into face mode, so right click again, go to face, and then select every face on the top. Just hold shift to select multiple ones, and then press backspace. Make sure you haven't deleted too many, so have a quick check around. If you have, just press Z to undo. And now we need to extrude a section out of this. So I'm going to right click and go to Edge. Then I'm going to double click on one of these edges to select the whole way around. Or you could select one and hold shift and work your way around. Now we can extrude this up. So I'm going to go back to Edit Mesh. Before I click on Extrude, I'm going to go to the options and reset the settings. Edit, Reset Settings, and then Extrude. Now I will explain more about extruding in a separate tutorial, but for now you can see the arrows are in quite a random direction. It actually corresponds to one of these faces, so we want it to correspond to the grid, so we can click on Global. That's just this button outside of our extrude tool, and then we can extrude this straight up. And you'll need to zoom out, you need to give yourself a bit of height because that's going to be the full height of the table leg. So let's just move that up a bit more, and then deselect it, just click anywhere outside, and we're going to go back to object mode. So right click and go to object mode and select your object. Now we need to give ourselves an extra division at the very top, so we can use the edge loop tool for that. Go up to Mesh Tools, insert edge loop, And if you're not used to this tool yet, you need to remember to actually zoom in quite close. Click and hold the mouse button in on any edge that you want the edge loop to actually go around. So I want it to go around the whole of the outside of this object. So I'm going to click on any vertical line. And then still holding the mouse button down, we can move up and down. And once we're happy with the position, release the mouse. Okay, now we're going to scale that up, and we can do that a number of ways. You can either select all of the faces, the edges, or the vertices. Now I'm going to select the vertices just for practice. So right click, go into vertex mode, and you can see I'm still on my edge loop tool, so I need to actually go back to my select tool. And now we want to select all of these vertices, and it's a good idea to press 4 to go into wireframe and then highlight over that. Just so you know there's no extra ones there we're selecting. For example, if you were looking down on your object, you're going to select too many if you simply highlight over that. So with all of these highlighted, we can go back into our shaded view by pressing 5. Zoom out a bit so we can see the whole object, and then go to the scale tool, and we're going to scale this up slightly. So scaling from the middle of the scale tool, and at this stage you can adjust the height if you want to, because it's only those vertices that are actually selected. And now we can give this a bit more detail again. So I want to add some more detail about a third of the way down here, and we can do that with the edge loop tool again. So go back to mesh tools, insert edge loop, and I'm going to put 3 in here. So click and drag on one of these edges, and I'm going to have 3 quite close together like that. I'm going to go back to object mode, so right click, object mode, and the select tool, and reselect the object. And we need to now select just this very middle edge. We could use vertex mode, or we could use edge mode. Whichever one's easier for you, it doesn't really matter. This time I'm going to use edge mode. So right click, go to edge, and I'm going to double click on one of those like we did earlier to select all the way around. So if you rotate around your object, you've got everything selected. And we're going to use the scale tool again. So go to scale and scale down from the center, so we can actually give this a bit of detail. Zoom out just to have a check. And I'm going to do the same thing towards the bottom. So let's zoom into the bottom. And we'll do the same process again. So go back to mesh tools, edge loop tool, and we're going to put another 3 in here. If you make a mistake, just press Z to undo that. And the reason I put the middle one in here last is because you can see it's already selected. So rather than going back to edge mode and then selecting it again, if you think ahead and you plan ahead, as soon as we've put that edge in there, or that division, because it's already selected, we can now go straight to our scale tool, and we can actually scale that down like we did earlier. We can zoom out to make sure it matches the top. We can now go back to object mode, so right click, object mode. I'll go back to my select tool, and now we can try smoothing that. So press 3, and you'll find you lose a lot of this detail. So like we did earlier, we can add some more divisions in. So if we start at the top, I'll press 1 to go back to our unsmoothed view, go back to mesh tools, insert edge loop, and I'm going to add 3 in here. You might have to zoom quite close. I'll put one towards the top, just like we did with the tabletop tutorial earlier. Give yourself a slight gap, the same here at the bottom. You might need to zoom in quite close to get it right. Like I said, if you make a mistake, just press Z to undo that. And we can put just one towards the middle here. I'm also going to put one towards the top here as well, because you can see this starts to get narrower. Now I want to keep that sharp edge, so I'm going to put one as close as I can up to this one. And now we can work on the bottom. So if we move down, we can do the same process for this section. So I'll place one edge loop just above that, one just below this bit, and then one towards the middle. And also, we need one just before our cylinder here goes into the sphere. Okay, now right click, go back to object mode. I'm going to go back to the select tool just to turn my edge loop tool off. Reselect the object and try pressing 3 again to smooth that and see how it looks. And you should get quite a nice result. If I just deselect it so we can see that as just a plain grey, that's come out quite nice. You can see the very bottom, it's almost stretched. We can fix that. So with this smoothed, I'm going to select it and I'm going to right click and go to vertex and then select all of this section. So I'm going to press 4 for wireframe and select all of this, and then we can scale that all together. So press 5 to go back to shaded, go to your scale tool, and I'm just going to scale the Y axis. So I'm going to scale that down just to make it more round. Go back to object mode. Now if we have a look at the top, we can finish this off by filling in this section. So zoom in a bit closer and unsmooth the object by pressing 1. Select all of your edges, right click, edge mode, double click one of these edges on the outside and make sure everything's selected. And then we can go to extrude. We'll use the shortcut on the shelf, that's this one here. And I'll zoom in a bit closer. And I'm going to use the scale tool for this. So I'm going to go straight to scale. And I'm going to scale in a small amount first of all. I'll go to extrude again. Go back to the scale tool. And now we can scale right into the center, but leave a small gap. And with that still selected, you can either have the edges selected or you could select the vertices if you want. We can go to Edit Mesh and then Merge to Center. And that will merge all of these into one. Press 3 again to smooth that to see how it looks. Go back to Object Mode and zoom out and have a look. And if you're happy with that, we don't want too much detail, but if you're happy with that, we can save it and then stay tuned for part 3 where we can import the leg and the tabletop into one scene and we'll actually duplicate the leg.